Cisco enables zero trust security? I'm Jason Maynard. I'm a senior multi-domain architect focused on cybersecurity with Cisco Systems. Now, the old security model no longer works, right? Businesses now are competing as ecosystems. This includes things like business to business, business and partners, their employers, their employees, where they work from, whether it be hybrid, in the office, at home, or at the local coffee shop. And now everyone is an insider, increasing the overall risk. We can't authorize somebody access and give them continuous access for the entire life of that connection. We've got to scrutinize this a little bit further. Let's dig into this a little bit. Zero trust means different things to different people, and none of them are wrong. Some might be looking at this from a segmentation perspective. Maybe zero trust network access, that's been thrown around, and that is an element of it. Endpoint security, it's a firewall, it's identity. All of these are components and needed to drive a zero trust outcome. Nobody's wrong here. All right, let's go through a little bit of an analogy here. So initially I had mentioned that once you got access to an environment in the past, you had unfettered access for the most part. And you may have scrutinized it a bit with data center firewalls and IPS and things like that, but you never went back to reevaluate the trust level that you granted when you gave the initial access. And there's a problem with that design, especially the way the industry has evolved, right? Work from home, hybrid, services in the cloud, on-premise, lots of complexity with business partners and all the other things in between. Certainly challenging. So let's look at this from an airport perspective, buying a ticket and flying somewhere. And so when you buy a ticket, there's going to be some information they require, right? Some identification. You're going to give the first name, your last name, the trip details, your credit card information, and passport details perhaps, right? All of that's going to be included at the initial inception of buying a ticket. You haven't even hit the airport yet. You're just purchasing a ticket. And so there's some identification that takes place. Now, this does not mean that the individual entering the information doesn't have a nefarious purpose behind it. For example, a credit card could be stolen. Passport details could have been stolen, and they could have entered that information. It's enough information to get the ticket purchased, but now we get to the airport, and we may need to get our ticket from the airport, or we may have downloaded it onto our mobile device. But once we get there, we're going to go into to the kiosk potentially, and we might want to check a bag as an example. So again here, there's going to be additional information that's needed to be shared. You might need to put in your credit card if it's a kiosk, passport details, the details of the trip. And then if you check baggage, you're going to check baggage here. And this is the first part of the scrutiny that you're going to go through once you're in the airport. And you can see why a zero trust model works here and why you would want it. And our networks are very much the same thing, right? If we only had to buy the ticket up front, once we get into the airport, if that's all we needed, we can do anything that we needed to do. And that means we could do things with a nefarious mindset that could put others at risk. And so we might check the baggage. When the baggage is checked, guess what? It's going to be scanned. They're going to look to make sure that there's nothing in that bag that would put anybody at risk. Also, as you move along now, you move into security. Now, when you go to security, you're going to be checked again, right? They're going to check your body and make sure that there's nothing that's there of risk. And they're going to check your carry-on bags for liquids, anything that shouldn't be there. They might open up your laptop, and they may or may not validate the ticket. You might end up, based on that initial posture, move into secondary screening. And again, there could be some checks and balances that are going to be performed in this secondary screening. But again, what they're trying to do is get a level of trust where they can let you move on to the next section. Now, if you're flying out of country, and let's assume to the US, you're going to go through US customs in Canada anyway. And again, information is going to be checked. Your ticket, they're going to look up your personal information, look for details of the trip. They want to know where you're going, what you're doing. They want to make sure that you are doing the things that you claim that you are doing, and also the person you claim to be. Also, again, you have a secondary screening that might take place with that initial posture. Once you get in, now you're past that initial screening from the security perspective. Once you get to the gate, you're going to have, again, pass the ticket, and your identification is going to be checked. This could be passport or driver's license, depending on where you're flying. But again, they want to make sure it's you and you have a valid ticket to board the plane. Once you're on the plane, again, there could be another check that happens where the stewardess may come up to you and say, look, we want to check your ticket and make sure you are who you say you are, based on feedback that they might get at the gate. So this is more in line with the Zero Trust model. You're never fully trusted, right? Until the very, very end, and only for that period of time to take that flight. So Zero Trust principles is always about never assume trust. So very much like the airport analogy, just because you pass one check doesn't give you unfettered access the rest of the time that you're there. You're going to be scrutinized, and we're always going to verify trust and enforce least privilege. So just because you have a ticket doesn't allow you to board any other plane, only the plane going to the destination that you have purchased the ticket for. And that's it, nothing more. Cisco believes that Zero Trust must be defined holistically, and we all know that Zero Trust is not a single product. It's a set of guiding principles, and these principles will drive out the strategy that is centered around a platform-based approach to Zero Trust with capabilities driven by technologies that include features to drive the outcomes desired for Zero Trust. And this includes things like ease of use, interoperability, time to value, and again, that platform-based approach is going to give you a significant advantage. And so Cisco's strategy in this is really about embedding Zero Trust across the fabric. We all know that it is a multi-environment IT. So you've got private cloud, public cloud, SaaS-based services, hybrid workforce. And so the goal here is to protect the integrity of the business by securing access that not only allows the user flexibility to access the resources they need to perform their jobs without user friction, but in turn frustrates the adversaries in their inability to be successful to compromise the environment. The hoops that they have to go through significantly deters them from attacking that organization. And so when you look at it, there's some trade-offs here, right? Security versus productivity. So the greater user productivity, obviously the less security. The greater the security, usually the less productivity. And so we need to have a balance here. And so what we want to do is get that sweet spot where we're providing strong levels of security with high levels of productivity that empower the users to do the right thing and make sure that their ability to access services is there, but being scrutinized with the level of trust that is continuous. So we want to think about this from a platform-based approach. We want to make sure that we're enabling the user community to access the resources that they need in a timely manner without user friction, but we want to increase security. We want faster threat response time, and we want to decrease the overall risk and cost of any data breach that might happen. Now, Zero Trust doesn't guarantee that you'll never be breached, but what it will do is significantly reduce the blast radius the adversary has to cause havoc to an organization. And so another driving factor of this is having the ability to provide security resilience. So whether you're in the cloud, on-premise, hybrid workforce, SaaS-based services, you want to build a platform-based model that allows you to use all of these services without the complexity that comes with it. And Zero Trust is a strong component of that. And so what we want to do is, as we work through this, we want to make sure that we're establishing trust. We want to enforce trust-based access, and then continuously verify trust. Now think of this as the analogy of the airport. Just because you've gotten trust initially by buying the ticket and getting past that first security check, it doesn't mean that you have full access for the entire time that you're at the airport. So we want to continuously verify trust, and then we want to respond to change in trust. So for example, if you had tried to get on a plane that you shouldn't have got on, well, obviously there's going to be some questions asked why you're trying to get on a flight that you're not scheduled to be on. So continually verify trust and respond to change in trust over time. So let's talk about some of the use cases here. So we can establish trust with remote users trying to access a cloud app from their device. So user will authenticate, then they'll be verified, their device posture is checked, their device trust is validated, and then they gain access to that application and nothing more. And so this enables strong security because it provides multi-factor authentication. You can do things with biometrics and passwordless and tokens. You can establish device trust based on the level of risk to that asset, meaning is the firewall enabled? Is it compliant? Is it compromised? And then policies can be adaptive based on the conditions, whether they've been met or not. And then high productivity, why is that? Well, I don't need VPN to connect to use this application. It's a SaaS-based application, so it's easy for enrollment and with a few easy steps. And then it ultimately reduces help desk tickets because we've removed some complexity here. Users have the ability to self-enroll. Now, remote user trying to access a private application, again, without VPN. So users require access to the private app from managed or unmanaged device. User can directly access the app using a browser without remote access software, so VPN. And then users get access only to the app and nothing more. Again, very similar to that SaaS workflow that we just talked about, or that SaaS application, but this one's a private application. And again, very similar things that are happening here. Now we're explicitly providing trust based on a per app basis. We're providing security for high risk protocols like RDP and SSH. And we can secure the bring your own device with device posture assessment for that unmanaged device. Productivity, we get frictionless, consistent access, we reduce latency, and then we support that hybrid environment. So things like SSO come into play, or instant access to apps anywhere. Now, continuously verifying trust, right? Remote user and device behavior impacts trust levels. So again, just like the airport, once you get access doesn't mean that you have unfettered access forever. It means that we're going to scrutinize you. So for example, the user already authenticated and is using the app, and then for whatever reason, the firewall gets disabled. Now trust is lost, right? This is that continuously verify element that I talked about. And now the app access is revoked, and then you get into user prompt to re-enable the firewall. So again, removing that user friction by educating them what they need to do to get the access back and not having to create a help desk ticket. So again, we're sharing signals now from other technologies to provide additional insight, whether or not the firewall was disabled or enabled, whether or not you've been compromised, as an example with malware, and so on. Or leverage contextual awareness with things like GeoIP and Wi-Fi fingerprinting, control user sessions with integrations with Cisco and third-party apps such as WebEx and Box. And then we got high productivity, work without interruption, improve IT efficiency, expedite restoration of access with user self-service remediation, which is key here. Now, potential compromise. So one, firewall is disabled, trust is lost, app access is revoked. And then we've got analyst immediately investigates to detect potential breach in progress. Analyst finds malware, alert on the device. Device access is blocked. And so now we've detect breaches earlier. So now immediate notification of changes in trust, and this is integrated with threat intelligence. We quickly pinpoint the incident, scope, and origin. So this includes things like forensic analysis, file and device trajectory, understanding exactly what happened on that asset, and expanding that further with that platform-based approach across our ecosystem of capabilities. And then we want to prevent data theft and lateral movement with device isolation. High productivity, work without interruption. So BYOD support, we accelerate threat response. Again, that integrated platform-based approach is going to give us that unified visibility and aggregate that data across our entire environment. We're going to accomplish more with current teams. We've got playbooks, workflows, playbook-driven automation, and so we're going to be able to get more out of the teams that are supporting the technology than we did in the past, because the technology is going to help drive additional outcomes. Now, establishing trust. We want to authenticate user and device trust across wired, wireless, and VPN. And so we look at user device requests network access. We got user device is authenticated, and then the role is verified. And then we've got a posture check. It's verified. And then there's a user device level trust established. And so again, we get strong security by authenticating seamlessly. So now we've got some global awareness with cloud and on-premise identity stores using standard-based protocols. We got secure BYOD and mobile device management with device posture assessment of both managed and unmanaged devices. And then we've got balance risk with flexible access. So this is identify devices, managed and unmanaged, BYOD, guests, visitors, to align access based on need. Then we get the result of this from a user perspective is higher productivity. We simplify and automate. So guest and contractor access based on business need. So we're going to leverage Identity Services Engine to help drive that outcome. We'll automatically detect, identify, and categorize devices connecting to the network. This includes IoT and OT-based systems. We want to accelerate and unify, and this is really providing access policy across a distributed global network. And again, we have the ability to do this with NAC from the cloud. Now we're going to enforce trust-based access. So this is apply least privilege access policies for BYOD guest and hybrid worker use cases. Now you might be thinking, well, there's a lot of pieces moving here, and there is. These flows all have a specific need and a desired outcome. And so we're working through each one of these to highlight that there is more than just zero trust network access. It goes much beyond a simple technology or capability. Again, it's a framework of capabilities that you got to drive towards to achieve zero trust. And so we've got user device has been authenticated to the network. The device is profiled, classified, and we use software-defined access to tag that information. And then the device is granted access based again on least privilege. Now, we established explicit zones of trust. This is now using role-based access control and least privilege. We now secure contractor access. We've got device posture assessment for unmanaged devices. We can scale up to 1 million guest accounts. We can automate policy enforcement with the ability to shut down access to the network using rapid threat containment. User productivity or high productivity, automate application access control across wired, wireless, and VPN. We have the ability to unify zero trust controls across that distributed network from leveraging NAC from the cloud, and you can support that hybrid model. So hybrid cloud and on-premise implementation are options that you can certainly support here. Establishing trust. So we want to map the application landscape and profile. So this is now moving into the data center. We're working through the workloads themselves. There's an opportunity to provide zero trust here. So again, application discovery is initiated. So in order to build policy, we need to understand the application. The application's behavior identified, risks assessed, policies discovered. And then policy engine recommends zero trust policy tailored to that environment. So it'll make recommendations for you to apply policy, and the analyst has the ability to modify that or make changes to it as needed. Now, strong security, well, we're discovering any kind of application, whether workload, containers, VMs, or bare metals. We're going to assess the app context. So we're going to map the application and workload communication and analyze the application behavior. So we really truly understand how the application works. And then we're going to identify any vulnerable workloads that might be exposed as well. And the goal here would be mitigate that risk. From a high productivity perspective, achieve maximum flexibility. So this is driving both agent and agentless approaches to enabling that visibility across all environments. This is, again, whether it's cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, or public cloud, doesn't really matter. Prioritize areas of highest risk. So we want to be focusing our times where we're going to have the greatest impact in regards to mitigating threats and reduce the attack surface. We want to gain greater visibility and awareness. This will be with integrations with CMDBs and IPAMs and additional investments that you might have. Now we want to enforce trust-based access using micro-segmentation at scale. So this is Zero Trust policy is generated now. We've got a policy validation on that workload, and now we're testing it, and then we're ultimately moving to a micro-segmented data center environment. Again, doesn't matter if it's private, public, hybrid, a mix of it, doesn't matter at all. Strong security, again, least privilege, so we're going to prevent lateral movement, and we'll enforce Zero Trust across all applications. We're going to unify security controls, host, network, and cloud security, and we're going to apply a consistent policy. Again, hybrid and multi-cloud environments and all kinds of different form factors. We're going to be able to apply that consistent policy across them all. High productivity, we want to automate policy lifecycle and management. This is dynamic policy engine with automatically generates policies. This is key. We want to enhance accuracy and reduce risk. This is real-time analysis and testing verifies policy without impacting the application itself. So again, the goal here is truly understanding the application and how it communicates to build policy to ensure that we're not impacting the environment when we do go to enforcement. And then increase overall efficiency, right? So you got CI and CD integrations with existing workflows to empower DevSecOps to write security policies right into the application as code. Continuously verifying application behavior. So privilege escalation within that application followed by shellcode execution. So the adversary has landed on the asset. They have been able to bypass the existing controls today and they've landed on an asset. The thing is that they're not going to be able to move laterally. So they're really stuck within the asset that they've compromised for the most part. But a security alert is triggered. SecOps identifies root cause, indications of compromise from that alert information. And the goal here is to monitor and alert non-compliance. So if there's any deviations from Zero Trust policies, we want to know about it. We want deep forensic data. So we want to report, analyze, and record any abnormal behavior by retaining those flow records that we capture here. We want to simplify vulnerability management. So we want to match inventory of software packages and versions to those vulnerabilities, and ultimately build policies based on those vulnerabilities that may exist that we can't patch. And then from a productivity perspective, it's going to increase our ability to respond to alerts based on the signals that we get. We're going to be able to free up IT resources by providing a shared responsibility with role-based access control with application owners. And we're going to accelerate remediation. Why? Because we're going to have deep insight into the flow information, forensics, and vulnerability information. That's going to accelerate our ability to mitigate risk. So Zero Trust capabilities. So let's round this up here. So we want to establish trust. This is user device and service identity, posture and context, risk-based authentication. We want to enforce trust-based access. This is micro-segmentation, unified access control, least privileged, and explicit trust. Continuously verify, reassess trust. We want indications of compromise. We want to have shared signaling. We want behavioral monitoring, threat and non-threat activity, because not everything is adversarial that would cause risk to an organization. Some could be programmatic errors that are introduced or human errors that have been introduced. And vulnerability management, and then respond to change in trust. We want to prioritize incident response, orchestrate remediation, and we want integrated and open workflows. And so when we look at that, we want that against user and device security, network and cloud security, application and data security. And this is really where Cisco comes in. Cisco has the most comprehensive capabilities to not only drive Zero Trust outcomes, but also the supporting technologies that you need to maintain Zero Trust. So when you look at user and device security, you got Duo, Secure Endpoint, and Kenna Security. So this is multi-factor authentication. This is the endpoint detection and response and endpoint protection in general. Canna provides insight into the risk of vulnerabilities that reside on an asset. Network and cloud security, you've got Identity Services Engine to provide software-defined access. You have Umbrella to provide DNS, proxy, cloud-delivered firewall, intrusion prevention, remote browser isolation, DLP, Zero Trust network access, and secure firewall, where you get into intrusion prevention, you get into advanced malware protection, you get into URL filtering, as well as all the other things that come with firewalling. You get secure network analytics to look at east, west, north, south, traffic flows and patterns across the hybrid cloud environment. You have application and data security, where you're looking at the workloads themselves and providing host-based application segmentation. And then you got cloud analytics to be able to analyze what's happening in that cloud environment and providing recommendations around threats that may exist, and so on, which is all wrapped up into a platform-based approach powered by SecureX. Now, SecureX is going to provide the ability to do threat hunting. It's going to provide centralized dashboarding, and it's going to also include things like orchestration and automation. So pretty neat stuff, but that's the robust capability around Cisco and Zero Trust. So wrapping this up, we've got Cisco Threat Intelligence at the top here with incident response services and threat research. You have detection and response. You're never going to prevent 100% of everything, so you need to be the ability to observe, prioritize, investigate, orchestrate, and automate. And you want this across user and device, network and cloud, application and data. And you may need services to help support you to design, deploy, and optimize. So why Cisco? Well, there's a couple things. First off, our goal here is to frustrate the adversary and not the user. So strong security with high productivity. We went through those use cases and certainly showed both sides of that equation. We want to meet you where you are, and this means that if you have a multi-environment IT ecosystem, we're going to be able to drive the same outcomes across that multi-IT environment. Cloud, on-premise, SaaS-based, hybrid workforce, doesn't really matter. Experience that you can trust. And the whole goal of this is not only drive a zero trust outcome, but provide that resilience across the organization when it comes to security. So some next steps here. So what you want to do is define your objectives. So desired zero trust outcomes. We want to perform a level of gap analysis. So what is the current zero trust challenges? And then we want to draft a roadmap, an action plan towards that zero trust strategy. And that's something that Cisco and our partners can help you with.